Alleluia. Om Mani Padme Om. Allah Satnam.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. We're speaking with Jan Lester. She's the Director of Public Affairs at the Church of Scientology in Melbourne. And we've spoken to Jan in the past 2 weeks. Jan, last week we were talking about Narconon, and you mentioned the purification rundown. Mm-hmm. Can we have a little bit more a look at that? Because narcotics and mind-altering substances are a major issue. Mm-hmm. So what does the purification rundown look like?
So purification rundown was devised by Mr. Hubbard, and it basically gets rid of the toxins from the body. Mm-hmm. There's been scientific tests done on this by other outside organisations, and it's actually been proven by outside organisations that it works. Mm-hmm. And it's based on the fact that the body, toxins are lodged in the fatty tissues of the body.
Yes.
So through this process, through this rundown, those toxins are dislodged and then they're sweated out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just finished it myself, actually.
Oh, did you?
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So how did you find it?
Oh, it's amazing. Just amazing. I remember I've done it a couple of times, and the first time I did it, I remember when I finished, I walked out into the street and it was as though someone had taken blinkers off me. Like all the colours were just so bright, it was so vibrant, and you have a new lease on life, like new energy levels. And I was out in the out by myself, a wetsuit and down the surf, and that wasn't like me. No, so but I just felt really, really good after it.
Part of you.
Oh yes, it's just amazing how these things, it's just life, you know, there's pollutants. It's not necessarily that we are all taking drugs, it's just the various chemicals in life that build up over time, and if they are lodging in the body tissues, they can build up, and they do play havoc on the way you feel physically.
Yeah. That's interesting. You'd be familiar with the fact that the processes like cupping, etc., oftentimes draw actually dark fluid from the body. Is there anything which flows from your body under that process?
Not in my experience. Not in my experience. It's sweating out. You're sweating out. Like it's funny. You actually can recall things. Like I got a sore throat during it, and I thought, wow. This is the anaesthetic that I had when I got my tonsils out when I was 6.
Yes.
Whoa. And things like that occur. Amazing. Yeah.
Well, that
like, what's that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that there's centres in Melbourne. Is it a big one in New South Wales? You said.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's separate. We run the purification rundown at the church, but Narconon is the connection with the church is that they use L. Ron Hubbard's technology in the area of drug rehabilitation.
Okay.
But the church is a religious centre, and people come in to do courses and whatever to help themselves spiritually. Yeah. Narconon is totally separate. It's a secular thing. Yeah. It does, like we are interested in what is going on there, of course, and because we like people doing well, and we want people to get rid of that stuff, and we don't want people taking drugs. So we're of course very interested in what's happening there. Yes. And so we do talk, of course, but no, it's its own organisation. They run separately, right? And they have the head organisations, like in US. And they coordinate, management will coordinate down through to the various countries and whatever. But there's a lot of centres around the world. You know, that's a very worthwhile public service, that's for sure. So the purification rundowns are things which you would do in the church itself. Yeah, and it's part of Narconon as well.
Are there many people who do it in the church? Really?
Yes. Yes. It's we have around 20 people a week. We call it the Purif. So we have around 20, sometimes more than that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's sort of got the feeling about the American Indian sweat lodge. Sounds about it. So is it like a sauna type setup?
Yeah, it's a beautiful little centre. It has. We start off with we take vitamins, and then you exercise on. We've got treadmills there, or some people go for runs, and that starts to dislodge the toxins, and then you go into the sauna. Normal sauna. We've got 2 of those at the church, and you sweat out the toxins, and then when you have breaks, you have lunch or dinner or whatever, and or if you feel a bit hot, you can go and have a shower. Change rooms with showers. It's like a little spa centre. Very nice, and you eat lots and lots of raw veggies. Or lightly steamed veggies. You actually have to report on that, so the supervisor knows that you're getting a good intake of vegetables.
Right.
And then there's a very strict regime of vitamins that you take, and that's monitored. Drink lots of water in the sauna. So all of that's monitored. The supervisors are highly trained, and then you go through. It takes roughly around 3 weeks every day.
Every day.
Every day.
My goodness. Yeah, so that's a fair bit of devotion and dedication, isn't it?
But the benefits are amazing.
Yes, absolutely. So this goes to the point of the emphasis on the various aspects of yourself being at their optimum operation, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Now, you do something else in the church as well, which is this personality testing. Now, How does these two things link in together, or how do they operate?
It's called the Oxford Capacity Analysis, the personality test. It wasn't devised by Mr. Hubbard, but he found that. And it's basically 200 questions, and the person answers it according to how they're seeing things, how things are going for them at that particular time. And then the supervisors are able to work that into a graph. There's a program, and then they will come out with a graph that has different sections of a person's personality. And
I've got a personality flaw, and it's bad time management.
Okay.
We'll need to go. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Jan Lester, Director of Public Affairs, Church of Scientology, Melbourne. Talking about purification rundowns and personality testing. Personality testing, how many questions did you say?
200.
200 questions. Okay, so I come through and I've done my 200 questions. What happens then?
So your questions would be marked, and then that produces a graph. And the graph is divided into sections, and it shows things like communication. Some people are good in the communication area, whereas other people may be withdrawn. It shows things like motivation, various traits of personality. Now, the reason it's done is that people come into the church and they're not feeling good. They don't really know what's wrong. So this pinpoints an area to start in, and it might be in relationships, it might be in communication. So the person who marks the test and has the graph can say, look, you're down here or up there or whatever, and they can actually find then a course for that person to do to get more knowledge in that area and improve. And then they do another one after they've done the course, and the graph actually changes.
Right.
The area that was down will rise. So that's a gauge for the people who are in that area of those courses to know that person's really gotten something out of it.
Really. And for the person
they can see it.
Build on it. Yes. Once again, is that like the purification rundowns are fairly well populated? Do you find a lot of people doing the test?
Oh, yes. Because some people might come in, they might hear about the Purif, purification rundown, and they'll come in to do that. Some people might come in and they know that they're having trouble with their kids. They need some help in the area of parenting, and then others will come in, they're not really sure, and so they can have one of these tests done, and then they can pinpoint the area. So
now all of these people wouldn't be committed Scientologists, I wouldn't imagine.
No. Scientology isn't something that you join. It's a choice. It's a life choice. I personally, I had done a few courses. I'd done the Purif, and then just one day I just thought, I'm a Scientologist, because I was actually applying these things to my life. And I like that, and I like that idea that I'm a Scientologist, and really that's what it's about. It's a personal choice. But it doesn't mean everybody who comes in to study or do the Purif or whatever is a Scientologist or has to be a Scientologist.
No.
Personal choice.
We might address that, the depth of that personal choice later when we talk about the 8th point on the scale there. But if we could just go on to the another thing which this might be one of the things that Scientology is best known for amongst people is the auditing. How does that operate? What's the story behind it?
So the usual affairs of the church are training and processing or auditing. And they're the religious aspects of the church, because some people will train to be auditors and others will receive auditing.
Right.
And an auditor means one who listens. It's spiritual counselling.
Okay.
It's done one-on-one. Dianetics was the first technology that Mr. Hubbard discovered, and from there he discovered Scientology. So there's or founded Scientology. So we have Dianetics auditing, and we have Scientology auditing, and they come at different times.
Right. Okay. You'll let you set yourself up for a question there. Dianetic questions. Auditing.
Yes.
Let's start with that.
Okay. So for a person to receive Dianetics auditing, that we have introductory auditing or a free session. They can come in and try it, see what they think. Some people do a seminar and they actually learn about it, because you're going to have a better idea of things if you've actually got some knowledge in that area. So people do a seminar, and then they can actually audit other people. So it's not that you have to be a trained auditor for years and years to be able to perform Dianetics on other people. People twin up. You can do it in the lounge room. It's not a big, but you need to know what you're doing.
Right.
So you could do a seminar to learn about it. And it's based on a principle of having incidents in your past that have a negativity to them, a misemotion, negative charge, we call that. And it's being able to get rid of it, so that you no longer are pulled back by that negativity that's happened in the past.
So if you say people pairing up, what do they need to pair up?
Just themselves.
Just themselves.
Yeah, and they might have a list of the questions that they go through.
So where does maybe this is where the Scientology auditing comes in, where you use the machine with holding the readers or whatever they are.
Yep. So that's in the it's used. We have introductory Dianetics. Then the Scientology auditing is done by a trained auditor, and they are very highly trained. They're very good at listening. They are able to be there and let a person talk.
Right.
And they will acknowledge that person, but the main thing is that they're listening.
They're listening.
They're listening. They're not evaluating in any way. And the e-meter is a machine that the auditor uses to enable him or her to guide the person who's receiving the auditing. Because if you have something here that has got a lot of negativity attached to it, you don't necessarily want to look at it.
No.
It's too painful.
That's right.
Or you may not even be able to see it because it happened so long ago that it's sort of occluded from you.
Yes.
And so the auditor uses the e-meter, and he is able, when the person has a thought, he is able to see that a negative thought is actually taking place. Doesn't pick up on positive thoughts.
Right.
Amazing.
Right.
It's an amazing machine.
Yes, it sounds pretty useful. So you've got so that's the professional auditor, and
Yes.
they're trained.
Yes.
And we're coming to the break, but when we finish after the break, we really need to look at the auditor's code. There's quite a big code in relation to that.
Okay.
We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity. We're speaking with Jan Lester. She's Director of Public Affairs, Church of Scientology, Melbourne. So we're talking about auditing, and we covered Dianetic auditing and Scientology auditing, but the Scientology auditing uses the e-meter, etc. But you were saying that the Dianetic could just be two people talking in the lounge room. What's the specific controlling issue there? Is it a list of questions, or?
I think probably the Scientology auditing involves more training. Dianetics can be run, the introductory level of Dianetics can be run with very little training. You still need to be trained, but it's not as not that it's complicated, because it isn't, but it needs more training. A Scientology auditor has been really well trained, and anyone can still do that though, and that's where I said in the beginning that people have come into the church to train to be auditors or to receive the counselling.
But I think the key issue is the fact is that it is the key point is listening. That's what the auditor does.
He does, and he has to train to do that.
Yes.
We have communication courses, and they're available for public, so you can do little easy ones, and up to much more difficult ones where you can actually be there and be able to listen comfortably, and you're actually listening to the person.
Well, in my experience of life, listening is the least appreciated skill of all. It's very necessary. Now, with your auditors, you in looking at your website, which is the most extensive website I think I've encountered for a very long time, there's nothing much missing there. There's a code for auditors.
Yes.
And it's got 29 points. And they're really quite serious in their approach, as one would hope they would be. But when you say they're professional, they truly, if they follow this code, would truly be so. You've got to you promise not to ever miss sessions, etc., which are pretty much administrative type things, but to have respect for the person who's being audited, to never walk away, never get angry, to always stick, and this I think was an important point, was to say that not to operate outside of with your opinion of what might be wrong with a person or what might be happening in their life. So it really sets down a whole series of conditions to be a good listener. And we won't go through those 29 points, but I was pretty impressed with the way in which the preparation had been done. Now, are these things that Mr. Hubbard put together, or have these been developed later?
No, Mr. Hubbard put all of this together.
All of it together?
Yes, yeah.
Right, okay.
It's very important for an auditor to be highly ethical. You've got a person who's going in and sharing their problems, sharing whatever has occurred in their lifetime or lifetimes, because we believe that we've lived before. You want to feel totally safe with that person. Yes. Totally safe and totally trusting of that person. So an auditor is very valuable and understands and has to abide by a code in order to be safe and trusting for that person. You couldn't just have anybody walk in and do that, because you are not going to feel like you want to unburden yourself with someone who's not following a code. Doctors follow codes, don't they?
Yes, of course. Yes, that's right. And this is certainly a code. It's
and ministers.
Each one's precluded. It commences with "I promise to," or "I promise not to."
Yeah.
So I presume that they sign these, and so they're fairly serious commitment. That's quite impressive. Okay, let's go back to those eight points. All other. This is after the sensory, all extant sensory beings. It's got all other as that seventh point. What's being encompassed in that?
Spiritual. That spiritual dynamic is the person himself. It's not the body. It's not the mind, but it's the person. That person who is basically you or me. So it encompasses whatever that person is about. And I know from my personal experience that when I went into Scientology, I had problems. I had different things associated with work, associated with relationships. And when I look back now, I think my life would be very different if it wasn't for Scientology, because I've been able to work that out. So as a being, as a person, of course I'm going to feel much better about my life and about what I'm doing, and so it encompasses all of that. It's about the person, him or herself.
Yes, it's very interesting. That's where it leads on to the last point, which is probably the most critical point, which is the whole essence of the great being, the divine essence, God, whatever it is in the process. And we're not going to be able to answer that question today, so I'm not going to ask you. We'll ask if we can do it next week. That'd be wonderful. There's one question which pops up here is birth control and abortion, and we covered that a little bit. What's Scientology's response to birth control, abortion, any of those social issues like that?
Well, they're very personal issues, and I think this is an example of the 8 dynamics, and using those your dynamics, they're your personal dynamics, to make a decision on the things, and so you base it on what's the greatest good for yourself. The church itself doesn't have a stance on that area. You would look at well, what's going to work for me, my family, my group, and base it on that. So it's a personal thing.
Personal thing.
I don't mean that's personal to me, but each person.
Each person. Yeah. No, that's thanks for that, Jan. That answers the question quite adequately. We're out of time. Thanks so much for the interview. And we may have a situation where perhaps next week we could speak again. Would you be available if that happens?
I'd love to. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've been watching Harmony and Diversity. We'll be back next week. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om.